Good evening, everyone. It's Christopher Hale here in Rutherford County. I'm honored to be here tonight with the liberal redneck, Trae Crowder, who is a Tennessee comedian, famous for being the liberal redneck. He wrote the Liberal Redneck Manifesto. He is from Salina originally, native of rural Tennessee. He went to LA and became a comedian, but he is kind of, I would say, an ambassador for rural America, for progressive America in LA among comedians. And he actually was the hillbilly ambassador to the New York Daily News. I want to introduce myself to folks who haven't met me. My name is Christopher Hale. I am a native of Rutherford County, and I'm running for the United States Congress against Congressman DesJarlais. I've spent my career standing up to the bullies, fighting for the forgotten, and making good things happen for Tennessee families. I'm all about rural health care. Rural hospitals, good jobs, and living wages. My opponent Congressman DesJarlais, is deluged by scandal. The man's number one legislative goal is to repeal the 20th century. He wants to get rid of all of it, from health care to Social Security, civil rights to workers' rights. He wants it all gone. I'm not about that. I want to build and protect the 20th century and also create the 21st century. I need your help. We're going to win a historic election on November 3rd. But we're only going to do it if you support my campaign. Thousands of people from across the state of Tennessee have contributed to my progressive campaign. The average donation is $27.11. If you want to give, go to ChristopherHale.com. I need your help. I'm not afraid to ask for it because we need to win this election. Too much is on the line for our families, for our children. If you also are in my community and you want to pledge to vote, please text Hell Yes to 31996. But without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Trae Crowder. Trae, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I'm here. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. How are things going out there? Y'all being safe?
Yeah, things are pretty good out here in Los Angeles, Burbank specifically, where I'm at. It's literally illegal to not have a mask on out here. So if you're going to go in anywhere or whatnot. So it's weird how quickly you can find yourself in a bubble, even if you're aware of the fact that you're in a bubble the entire time. And I say that because being in this atmosphere for the whole quarantine and pretty much never seeing anyone without a mask or anything like that, whenever I have to go to the store or something, I often forget the atmosphere in a lot of other places. And I'll talk to my buddies back home and stuff. One of whom got literally screamed at a gas station in Cookeville, Tennessee for having a mask on. And another one saw two young guys get screamed at a different gas station, also in Cookeville, Tennessee, for having masks on. So yeah, it's weird times.
You know, one of my opponents, I have a mask too, branded Hell Yes mask. One of my opponents, I called it a Soros mask. And unfortunately for him, it was not made by George Soros and the globalists. It was made by a union printer down the street. But you're right. There's a lot of political controversy, unnecessary political controversy about science. Science is now controversial. They believe in it. But I want to talk to you a little bit about you. I mean, so you grew up and you said that you were a progressive. You told people that you were a progressive because of abject poverty, right? Poverty is what made you a progressive. You also had relationships that went beyond Clay County. You had a gay uncle who made you reconsider the world. So if you can give us a sense, why are you a progressive? Why are you the liberal redneck?
Well, actually, you're pretty spot on, except it was the kind of reversed the order of it. I've always thought that my relationship with my Uncle Tim was sort of my introduction to progressivism, I guess, but I wasn't looking at it that way. Obviously, as a kid, I loved my uncle. And then, when I was like 9 or 10, my dad explained to me that my uncle was gay, and also just what being gay even was. That was my introduction to the concept and everything. And it literally didn't change anything about how I felt about him. All it changed was I started picking up on things that would previously have gone over my head, as far as the stigma and the way that gay people were, and I'm sure still are, talked about in places like that, specifically in church and things of that nature. And I started noticing this and not liking it. And because I love my uncle and everything, I wouldn't just kind of ignore it. I would, voice my displeasure with it. And that's sort of when I started realizing this kind of cultural divide, that I was on the other side of a certain type of, a metaphorical fence, basically. But then as I got older, and like learned about politics and policies and things like that, and the difference between progressives and conservatives when it comes to stuff like fiscal policy and whatnot, I, from the very beginning, felt that it would have been ridiculous for me as someone who grew up in poverty and never really had any money. It'd be absurd for me to be conservative on those matters, as well. So it all kind of just fell into place for me. I never really had much of an internal debate or anything about it. It all seemed pretty clear from my own personal perspective.
Well, it's interesting. You and I both grew up in Tennessee. I'm from Rutherford County originally, but we're both millennials, mid-millennials, I guess you would say, in our early, mid-30s.
Yeah.
When we grew up, the day I was born, the Democratic Party, I looked this up, the Democratic Party controlled about 81% of seats all across the state of Tennessee from county commissioner on up. Now, were they progressive? Well, they were the wokes of the 1990s. They believed in healthcare and they believed in education, public education, et cetera. But, as we traversed through our 20s, it fell apart. Like our party fell apart. Bredesen won all 95 counties in 2006, which is unimaginable. He got his ass. What do you call Marsha Blackburn? You have a name for her. What's some references you called her?
I think I was a dead-eyed Uber Karen, I think is what it was. Soulless dead-eyed Uber Karen, something like that.
Why did we get trounced by her? What happened? We were supposed to win that election. Why did we lose that election?
I mean, I thought, if you want to point to one thing, but it's one thing that I feel like is indicative of the problem overall with Bredesen's campaign that year, it was when he basically publicly supported Brett Kavanaugh when all that was going on. Like he said, if I was in office, I would, and he's confirmed I would support him when that was like the big hot button issue at the time. And I say it was indicative of his campaign at large because there was a lot of things like that where he was running as a Democrat, but very openly catering to the conservatives at the same time. And then, he got trounced. And I think that's because you can't be half a Democrat or half a liberal, in my opinion. All you end up doing, it seems to me, is just sort of pissing everybody off. Like you're trying to appeal to everybody, but it ends up working in the opposite direction. I think if you're going to be a Democrat, then be a Democrat, basically.
Well, and I think you hit the one part, the policy part, but I also think I have to make the argument that there's also a stylistic point. I remember the first debate with Marsha in Lebanon. I was there in person. And I love Phil Bredesen. I think he was a great governor. I think he had the hard choices to make, but all in all, much better than we have now. And I would go back to those days in a heartbeat. What's remarkable about that is Marsha begins this debate, and she basically says something like this. I'm exaggerating. She says, under Phil Bredesen's rule, the illegals are going to come in. They're going to rape our women. The government's going to force them to get abortions, and then they're going to burn down our churches. And then they're like, Mr. Bredesen, do you want to respond? And he's like, no, I don't, but I want to talk about the deficit. And it just never made sense.
Right.
It's interesting. We are I think at our best, I spent a lot of my career fighting back against, I would call the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. The wing of the Democratic Party doesn't understand rural America and just has left our folks behind. But, at our best, the Democratic Party is the party of the Davids. Okay. And we are the Davids of Tennessee, those who get up in the morning and try to pursue their dreams, treat their neighbor nice, want their kid to have a decent education. And our opponents are the party of Goliath. My opponent is funded by rich guys in silk suits who ride limousines to work and make their living as healthcare CEOs, screwing over Tennessee families and making sure our hospitals get closed down. But here's the thing about it. David showed up with a slingshot. He came to the battle with a slingshot. We de-weaponize ourselves from the get-go. We are way too nice. In my opinion, I want to win this election, but it's not going to be by holding hands and singing Kumbaya because that leads to 30-point losses. How can the Democratic Party get tougher here in Tennessee? What can we do?
I mean, it sounds to me like you're already, trying to do it because I agree completely with everything you just said as far as that goes. I've thought forever that Democrats want to always take the high road or not stoop to their level, and things like that. And I understand why, but that don't work with these people. And also they, I just don't feel like respect should be earned and then reciprocated if, appropriate. And there's no respect at all coming from their side ever. They're just, like what you said, Marcia Blackburn, her opening preamble with all this just fire and brimstone rhetoric that's complete hyperbole and just absurd, pandering ass, buzzwords for these people. Like you shouldn't dignify that with with not calling it what it is, which is a load of insane bullshit. Like you got to start calling it like you see it, I think, and not letting them just get away with lying and cheating and all of the things that they do. Like I know you've been calling DesJarlais out a lot, and that's good. You should, because people need to remember how insanely awful this guy is.
Well, it's remarkable to me. I love Michelle Obama. I worked in the Obama White House. I appreciate it. She said very famously in 2016 convention, when they go low, we go high. My honest assessment is when they go low, we punch harder for our people, our values, our way of life. The absurdity, my opponent says that he is pro-life. That's remarkable to me. Ask his ex-wife, who he dry fired a gun on, if he's pro-life. Right. Ask his multiple mistresses with 3 abortions that he coerced and pressured them if he's pro-life. But most importantly, ask the millions of Tennesseans without rural hospitals and good jobs and living ways, and they'll tell you the truth. Scott DesJarlais isn't pro-life. He ain't pro-life, but we let him get away with it. And I just don't think that's a viable option anymore. We have to punch back, and we got to call out the nonsense. I think one thing, I grew up in a small town that became a big town. Rutherford County was small the day I was born, but it got bigger and bigger. And what's remarkable to me is, and this is the question we have, is people were afraid to be Democrats, even though we grew up with Democrats. How did the Democratic Party lose its edge? Why did we become the party of coastal elites? And also, too, you've talked about, in some ways, the critique that Republicans make of Democrats are correct, that there is parts of our party that devalue rural America. Do you want to take that on?
I think that, in my experience, and I know that it definitely goes both ways, but I've talked to a whole lot of, rural Southern people specifically who are liberals or Democrats or whatever that I meet at my shows and whatnot. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard one of them self-identify as a closet liberal, but I feel like most of the time the rationale that they have is that they're just like, they don't want to screw up Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. Like they don't want to like be the one who is, bringing something up only to get ganged up on by everybody else that they know. But what happens is, when everybody's being quiet, they don't know that each other exists, and everybody thinks that they're alone and that they're the only one when they're not. They just think that because they all feel the same way, which is that they should be quiet. But I do think there is a level of shame where the Democratic Party is concerned in rural America now, because rural America feels very, very betrayed and ignored by the Democratic Party for a long time now, I think, because you're absolutely right about the Democratic Party should be the party of working people, and it shouldn't even be a question, and that should be one of the number one things that they hammer on in rural America, but they kind of just don't do anything in rural America for the most part. And people in the South and rural America, they are aware of that, and they feel, looked down upon, or just like, Democrats don't give a shit about them and whatnot. And so that leads to the stigma that comes with it. And that's why I think people, feel ashamed or whatever. The only time I feel ashamed of being a Democrat is when we get our ass whipped by somebody we should have beaten. Like I feel ashamed about like how we cannot win against these people. It continuously blows my mind. That's the part that I'm ashamed of.
Well, the opening scene of Newsroom, there's this great quote, and it's rhetorical. He says, if the Democratic Party is so smart, how come they never win a damn election?
Right.
And I think that's a very fair question. And Stephanie asked me a good question too. And she says, how are you going to pull in low-income rural folks, especially during this pandemic? The only way I'm going to win this election is if I am the champion of low-income rural folks. So let me talk about that both on a mentality and also a policy level. Number one, the Democratic Party needs to understand that rural poverty is just as real and as important as urban poverty. It does not matter where the poverty exists. It is a stigma. It's a stain on our country. The Democratic Party also, and I want to be a champion of low-income rural communities by the issue that matters the most. Tennessee has the highest rate of medical bankruptcy in the country. We have the highest rate of rural hospital closures in the country. And the Republican Party holds up the Bible on one hand and denigrates everything it stands for on the other hand, particularly in regards to healthcare. Scott DesJarlais, in the middle of a pandemic, last month, he went to go get an elective knee surgery, which is remarkable to me. He goes and gets an elective knee surgery, but at the same time, he wants to take away your healthcare. He wants to take away your access to healthcare, even though nearly 100,000 people in our community, in my congressional district, don't have healthcare. So the answer to your question, Stephanie, is I'm going to call him on his bullshit. I'm going to call him on his nonsense. When Scott DesJarlais pretends to be a champion of rural values, of community values, of Christian values, and when he goes against that with every vote, with every decision, I'm going to call him out on that, because it's time to stop being nice. It's time to stop being quiet. We have to tell the truth. We are losing election after election, not by 5 points or 10 points, but by 30 points. I'm not here to save my reputation and the good name. I'm here to win an election, and I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm not afraid to do that. I got a few more questions coming down here for you. Trae, you're very popular. I thought it was for me, but I think it is for you. Let's see. This is a good question for you. So how do we show people, this is for you from Andy Dickey, how do we show people that 15 rural hospital closures in Tennessee are a feature of the Republican Party, not a bug? What is the number one goal of the Republican Party in your mind? What do you think that their purpose is? What do they serve here in our community?
In our community, no one that I could think of. Their number one goal and mission statement is to make more money for, their big donors and just the billionaires and the super rich. Like, the bottom line for the very top percentage of people, that's literally the only thing that they actually care about. And so that's how, people in places like Clay County, where I'm from, and other rural counties, like, consistently get left behind by their policies because they're not a priority at all, And the closures of all these Tennessee hospitals are like a direct result of Republican, policies and stances. And I think you just have to continuously point that out. If you're in your position,
sure,
you have to make sure that, you never stop hammering on that, and on the fact that, you're going to do everything you can to fix it, to get them opened back up. And you have to talk about things like that and not, allow the conversation to just immediately turn to abortion, or although in your case, abortion's fine because you're running as DesJarlais, so you got plenty of ammo there too. But, you have to focus on the right things, I think, when you talk to people, and not get distracted by the federal wedge issues and stuff like that.
Well, we always take the bait. We always take the bait and get caught up in the side issues that actually do not help the average Tennessean's life. One of the things I want to kind of come back to on this is I think there is I kind of imagine my pathway to victory. This is no secret. My district is about 36 to 37% Democrat and about 50 or 63% Republican. So what I want to do, and my goal is, I got into this race. It took me a long time to decide if I was going to do this, but it's not easy. You put a lot on the line. It's exhausting. At some point I want to get married, et cetera. And I put this whole of my life. But what really got me into this race was the coronavirus, and it made me decide that I want to come out and fight this race. And what's remarkable about this virus is, for 70 days, Congressman DesJarlais and the President of the United States did nothing about this virus.
Right.
For 70 days, in January, February, and March, they knew about it and they did nothing to stop it. Now, here's what's remarkable. In mid-March, the President of the United States and Speaker Pelosi put together this economic recovery bill, and it provided three things: free testing for every Tennessean, a small business stimulus, and paid sick leave. This is Pelosi and the President of the United States working together in this bipartisan capacity. And Scott DesJarlais said no. So he is not just a typical Republican. You know, even that there's points. Not all, there. Look, I have plenty of critiques of President Trump. There are points when Trump works with Pelosi to make shit happen, to make things happen for Tennessee. But when DesJarlais comes there, he says no, because DesJarlais has lost any sense of reality, any sense of fighting for our community. And one of the things I want to kind of highlight and go forth is people I've talked to in rural Tennessee, particularly women in rural Tennessee, MAGA women, I call them. They know Scott DesJarlais. They know folks like that. He, in a lot of ways, has been the bad doctor his entire life. He abused his power as a doctor. He's not helped Tennesseans in illness as a congressman. I want to come to a question for you that I think is interesting. So I would love to ask you about why is the Republican Party fighting against mail-in ballots? In California, that they sued your governor, right?
Yeah, because they'll lose if they don't, or that's what they're worried about. I mean, it's the same way every voter suppression tactic they ever employ basically comes down to: the more people vote, the more likely it is we will get beat. So, and I feel like mail-in voting is just another example of that. Like that, as far as their rationale, again, it's the same rationale they always have for all the suppression techniques. It's like, oh, people abuse the system. There's voter fraud, and that's which are complete, just made up straw man bullshit arguments. And they just are trying to make it as hard as possible for anyone to vote, because the more people vote, the more, trouble they are in when the results are tabulated. And they know that.
It's remarkable to me because we know that if the majority show up, if every Tennessean that can votes, they're in deep trouble. So It's remarkable that they will do anything to stop that. One of the things I want to ask you in particular, as we kind of go forward here, if you imagine my race in particular and what I can do, do you think there is one piece of advice that you would give me going forward, knowing that I have such a margin to make up? Who should I go for first? What issue should I go for first? And what should I particularly focus on over the next 162 days?
I mean, okay, first of all, I'm going to give a disclaimer of I appreciate the question, but I'm not the person to give political advice, because I've thought before about how terrible of a politician I think I would make, because I just can't.
You aren't running anytime soon?
No, I can't filter myself well enough or keep my mouth shut and not just say what's on my mind. Basically, I can't be diplomatic enough to be a politician. But having said that, I feel like if I was going to pick one thing, and I mean, you've already alluded to it, with the pandemic and the hospital closures and all of that, I would say that it's healthcare and the well-being of the people in the communities, and just really hammer that home, especially again in your case, considering the guy on the other side is this morally bankrupt doctor who's been on the even though he is a doctor, he's on the other side of the fence on this, and has been detrimental. And it's what's on everybody's mind right now. It's what's most important to people, and it should be. And so, if I was going to say one thing to really focus on and try to utilize, I mean, I think I would go with that if I was you.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think if you think about this, reality is that on election day, the unemployment rate in rural Tennessee will be somewhere around 30%, which is remarkable, because this did not have to happen. And I want to make this very clear. If you think that this is the way it had to be, read a book and look at reality. Look what happened in South Korea. They look at their situation. Right. If we had taken action on this, we wouldn't have these unemployment numbers. And what's remarkable is if you have employer-based insurance, well, that sure isn't a solution when 30% of your constituents are out of work. I think the very simple question I have for my community that I want to pose to you tonight is life better for you and your family since Scott DesJarlais got elected on November 3rd, 2010? Right. Is it easier to pay the bills? Are you feeling secure about you and your children's future? Do you feel hope that things are going to be better under this leadership? What has Scott DesJarlais done? He's made $1.7 million. He got rich. We got sick. The only thing he did in a decade was rename a post office. Praise God. Thank you for that, Scott. It's not enough to get reelected. And I think I want to make a special appeal to folks who support the President of the United States. My one loyalty is to you and your family. A lot of folks in the Democratic Party don't like me, and I'm okay with that. I've spent a lot of my time standing up to the folks in the Democratic Party. Scott DesJarlais, he stands up for no one and anyone. His loyalty isn't even to the president, it's to himself. It's to protecting himself and his family. It's not to you and your family. And I'm going to go after him. That's how we're going to win this election. Us being the nice guy isn't going to do it anymore. It's not going to be a pathway to victory. And I want to call that out and I want to run an election in that way. So I am directly making an appeal. Just because you support the President of the United States doesn't mean you can't support me, because my loyalty is to you. We have one or two final questions. I know you got a lot of time. I know we've had you a lot of time. Trae, let's see. So can you talk a little bit? I know you're not a person of faith, and that's fine. Can you talk a little bit about how the right wing in our community has weaponized and manipulated faith as a means for electoral power?
I mean, I think it's been a very, very effective strategy for them, but it very much is it's a real shame because it detracts from the actual issues at hand that really affect these people. And I know if you're a person of faith, I know your faith affects you. That's not what I mean. What I mean is like all of the horrible economic policies that lead to higher unemployment and lead to worse healthcare and all that type of stuff. They don't matter when you're a very religious person and one party is the official party of your religion, and that's how they treat it. I'm like, they can be very, very religious people can be kind of single issue voters as far as that's all it goes. That's as far as it goes. And they're the Christian right, but they don't actually uphold any of the sort of philosophies or teachings of Jesus. They're not Christ-like at all. And so it's just the whole thing is really unfortunate that they've so effectively positioned themselves that way, because they're not that way, and it shouldn't be a factor for people. Or if it is a factor, frankly, you probably should be looking in the other direction, with how they act and conduct themselves.
Well, I mean, it's remarkable to me. I mean, the exploitation of faith by the Republican Party. Once again, I said this earlier, but to every Republican that holds up the Bible in one hand and denigrates everything it stands for, the good it stands for, the other, I'm coming after you. Your time's up. I'm not going to let you hijack the faith that I learned, the faith of the Gospel of Matthew that told us that God asked us to take care of the least of these, those who are sick, in prison, those in need of health care, those who are strangers in our midst. That is not the Republican Party. Let me be very clear. No party controls God. But
right.
What's the idea that God is a Republican is absolute nonsense. This is from Jessica Blevins. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica for a second. So Jessica and I were actually, I met Jessica. She's a spouse of a correctional officer in Bledsoe County Prison. There was this incredible article in the Washington Post. Our campaign was able to bring together Jessica, a spouse of a correctional officer, and Vicky Scroggins, a wife of an inmate. Two communities, communities oftentimes juxtaposed against each other. But in the Bledsoe County Prison, there was one of the biggest outbreaks in this country of the virus, and our government failed these two women. And so they became friends in fighting and protesting the state. Jessica is a supporter of mine, but she admits that she voted for Trump in 2016, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. She's not a Democrat or a Republican. She's just a Tennessean. What can you say? What is your argument to folks who don't identify with party et cetera, that are just, everyday Tennesseans on what issues should come to the forefront of their mind when making decisions on November 3rd?
I mean, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, which is that, like, look at who is in power right now. You're on neither side. That's fine. You're undecided. It's okay to be undecided. But look at the people who are actually in charge right now, particularly in the state of Tennessee. They're all Republicans, and the president is Republican. They are the ones that are in charge. They're the ones that have been in charge over the past few years. And as you alluded to earlier, is your life better right now? Has it gotten better than it was during, before that time? Like, truthfully answer that question. And I think you'll find the answer is, for the vast majority of us, ain't shit better at all. And so, to me, that makes the choice pretty clear. Like, maybe we should switch it up and see how the other does with the ball in their hands for a little while. And again, I'm talking specifically to undecided voters with that, because, to me, there's a million other reasons to vote, for the left. But yeah, if you're in that position, I think just look at how things have gone with them in charge and ask yourself if you really think it's best that continues.
Trae, you grew up here. You and I are native Tennesseans. We have seen the hijacking of our state from Republican forces. We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot in our time and growing up as Tennesseans, and we've seen some tough times, and these are some of the toughest of times. Can you give us a sense? A lot of people I'm talking to tonight, I think they see my candidacy. I hope a flicker of hope for Tennessee Democratic Party, for progressives, of someone who's a Democrat, unafraid to be Democrat, and who's going to go to every corner of this state and be a missionary for our cause and our values. But can you give us a sense of inklings of hope and what we should look to keep going, and just give us a word of hope, if you will, on the way forward? We are the minority party, but you have over 1,000 people across platforms tonight coming here tonight and wanting hope and wanting to fight. What's the final word you would give to us as we do the missionary work down here of fighting for progressive causes?
Well, in terms of just being hopeful, and this is mostly as far as social issues go, but still, I do think it's indicative of it. Just growing up in Clay County is an extremely rural county, very, very rural. That's where I grew up, until I was 18, and then I moved to the major metropolitan area of Cookeville, Tennessee. So I mean, it's still pretty rural up there in the Upper Cumberland. And just in my time there, from the time I was a kid to now, because I go back there every year before the apocalypse, at least I went back there every year. And how much it has changed in terms of, social things. Like, if you would have told me when I was in high school that gay marriage would be legal and, mostly accepted at large by people, I don't know that I would have believed that would be true in my lifetime, based on my experience, growing up there. I would have told you were crazy. I just wouldn't have seen it happening. And it's, as far as the Confederate flag and how prevalent it is, or just open and explicit racism and homophobia and things like that, I'm not at all saying that those things do not still exist in towns like my hometown. They do still exist. I'm saying I know for a fact that it has improved as far as that goes in our lifetimes. It may be gradual. We may, every now and then, for every step forward, we may take a couple steps back, or in a brief snapshot of time. But I know for sure that generally we are moving in the right direction, however glacial the pace may seem at times. And I think that if another flicker of hope, like, yes, there are plenty of Trump people, plenty of MAGA people who are firmly entrenched and you may not be coming back. But I think there are also a whole lot of people who have had their eyes kind of opened up to this party and its leadership's true colors, it being the Republicans and Trump and all of them. And I think people are coming around. And then the last thing is, it is generational. It truly is. Like, my good friends from Salina specifically, that grew up just like me, we're probably 50-50 at worst, liberal and conservative. But if you look at our friend group and break it down, and people don't realize that there are that many, like people think I'm literally the only one. Like outside
you are alone.
I'm the one and only one. And I'm like, no, that's not even in my hometown. Is that true? Like my buddies, it's not true. So like progress is happening still, despite what the headlines are right now. And I don't think on a long enough timeline, I don't believe that you can stop it. You know what I mean? Like people say it happens one funeral at a time, and I think that's true too. So I've always been hopeful that at the end of the day, we still, from a macro perspective, are moving in the right direction, and I do believe that will continue.
So, Trae, I have a question for you. When I win this election and I go to the U.S. Capitol on the 5th of January of 2021 as a rural Democrat who believes in Medicare for all, who believes that we should legalize marijuana, that believes that healthcare is a human right, who believes that the dignity of life extends to the end, would you come with me? Would you come with me on the House floor? Can we celebrate? Would you celebrate on behalf of rural Tennessee?
I don't know if they'll let me in the door, but I mean, yeah, I'd like, yeah, no, that'd be cool. I'd like to go to the Capitol, offend some people, make you look.
You're my VIP guest. You're my honor guest. Trae, thank you for being here tonight. I promise you this. I'm going to fight like hell to win this election. But most importantly, when I win this election, I'm going to fight like hell for our families, our rural communities who need rural jobs, who need health care, who need good jobs and living wages, who are crying out for help and who are getting nothing from the Republican Party. I want to be their champion. I promise I'll make you proud. And I hope we'll be in Washington soon fighting for those families.
Well, you know what? Hell yes, buddy.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Trae.
Thank you.
Guys, that was Trae Crowder. I want to put the stakes in front of you right now. This is a huge election. It's about our future. It's about our posterity. It's about our families. We are on the verge of a major breakthrough. I know it's been tough times. We're in the desert right now, but I'm offering you some water. This is the campaign that you need to get behind. I don't care if you're in my district or not. You can support us. We are funded by you and your family. The average contribution is $27.11 from Mountain City to Memphis. Tennesseans who are looking for a new way forward, I am your man. Tennesseans who are looking for a Democrat, a next generation Democrat who's unafraid to be a Democrat, who believes that healthcare is a human right, who believes that rural communities should not be left behind, that believes in good jobs and living wages. I'm going to win this election. I'm going to defeat Scott DesJarlais. I'm not blowing smoke up you. This is reality. If you feel the energy I do, if you feel the urgency I do, you're not alone. There are people around this community who feel the same thing. I know you've been let down before and it's hard to trust again, but I promise you that I'm going to win this election if you're with me. But I have to have you with me. Can you give $5 a month? Can you go to ChristopherHale.com and give $5 a month or more? If you give more, but give what you can. My opponent is sustained by the rich and the powerful. I am sustained by you and your family. It's not feeding me. It's feeding this movement. If you text Hell Yes, if you're in my community, you text Hell Yes at 31996. We will be in contact with you tonight, and you can help this campaign. We have folks that are knocking are doing the digital door knocking of these days. I believe we've already called and contacted over 5,000 people this weekend. There is no campaign, Democrat or Republican, that can say that. Last week, we raised more resources. We had more grassroots donors than any politician not named Phil Bredesen or Carl Dean in a generation. There is momentum here, but we need you to be a part of it. We have a long way to go, but you have in me someone who is energized, someone who knows what he's doing, someone who believes in government as a means for a common good. I want to be your champion. I want to be for you. I want to be for your kids, your posterity. Will you stand with me tonight? Will you make a donation? Will you sign up to volunteer? If you got any questions, please comment in the thread. We will answer as many as we can. Please spread the word. Please spread the word to every Tennessean who is struggling tonight, whether from this deadly virus, the inability to find good work, a checkered past, or a dim future, I want to walk with you the entire way. Tennessee, help is on the way. We'll see you soon. Have a good night.